The Soviet occupation of much of Europe was offset by the Americans' monopoly on atomic weaponry, and it led to an increasingly bitter standoff. Making matters worse was a Europe in ruins serving as the backdrop, and with Europe forced to again rebuild after a global war, there was a growing concern that the Soviets may not have to use their expansive military to take over. This was, after all, the second time in 30 years that traditional Western values seemed to end in a devastating war. The problems facing the US became bleaker in 1947. That year in February, the Americans realized how isolated they had become against the Soviets when the British informed them that they had finally had to admit that their economy had gone bad. And after Churchill's negotiations with Stalin to try and guarantee influence in southeastern Europe, they had to admit that the sun was setting on the British Empire. This would be most immediately felt in their admission that they could no longer be exclusively responsible for guaranteeing the economic and military responsibility in Greece and Turkey. Without that, they also could not guarantee that they could maintain stability in the Middle East. If the Soviets would be kept out of the region, it was going to be because of the Americans. Maintaining the status quo in the Middle East was of immediate importance to Truman because of the, quote, preservation of political stability, guarantee of access to mineral resources, and to assure a prosperous market for American goods, end quote. In order to do so, he said that the U.S. could not allow Greece to, quote, spiral downward into economic anarchy, end quote. Perhaps more than economic anarchy was the potential for Russian dominance, threatening three continents, that's Europe, Asia, and Africa. It was believed that only the U.S. could stop Soviet polarization. To combat that, the Truman administration asked Congress for $400 million for economic and military aid. This would officially make the Cold War a pitted battle between good and evil. On one side, Truman argued, was a free option based on representative government, free elections, guarantees of individual liberty, and freedom of speech and religion. The other option, said Truman, was tyranny based on terror and oppression, a controlled press and radio, and a suppression of personal freedoms. He argued that only framing the $400 million investment as such would lead to American support of the proposal. He said it must be the policy of the United States to support free peoples who are resisting attempted subjugation by armed minorities. So while the Americans as a people were looking to retreat from the world stage, Truman asked them to essentially choose between supporting freedom or ignoring tyrannical takeover. He dared them to allow for evil while ignoring good.